Hey guys, today we're using the truing and dressing tool to true and dress my Tormek stone. What's the Tormek? It is a repeatable angle sharpening system. So gets fixed angles on all sorts of tool sharpenings by the use of this fixed rod here, which you can move up and down using very slight modifications, or absolute up and down, all sorts. Yeah, it's very much a variable system, and just depending on which jigs you have as to what you can sharpen. You can sharpen chisels, drill bits, scissors, all this sort of stuff. I am generally using it for knife sharpening, using my standard knife jig or my small knife jig, which is currently attached to my standard knife jig. I'll do a video about that next week. But yes, what we're doing today is we are truing this stone back, because as you may see, you start to build up little irregularities in the stone throughout use. So this is pretty much an essential tool, this truing and dressing tool. You see here, every now and then you'll knock out a little bit, you'll get a little chip in the side from, maybe a knife will hack in there just randomly. I'm not the best at this Tormek stuff just yet, I'm just kind of learning, but I've used this dressing tool a few times now, and it's quite a cool thing to see. So let's get to it. So this is the dressing and truing tool up close. You can see here, this is the cutting jig here. So the edge of this will be cutting against the stone. This is a very hard piece of tungsten carbide, I think. So this is what cuts the stone. These would have a life on them, but I've noticed that you can, if you wind it over to the other side, you can rotate them as well. And yeah, there's just a little bit of replaceability to it, I'm sure. But I've used this one for probably 8 or so dressings, and it's been absolutely fine. You can see it runs in this channel here, along these here, and all the way to the other side. And then once I get it to the other side, I'll show you. So it's got this hex head here that you can use to loosen and eventually remove this if you need to. All that white crap around is just bits of stone that's accumulated, and you can just rotate it. If you start to lose this edge, you can rotate it, get another edge and whatnot. So there is some replaceability and maintenance for this one as well, rather than just having it, throwing it away as soon as it's not cutting. You can just rotate it a few times. Then I'm sure you can just order a replacement cutter by the looks of it. I'm surely sure. Anyway. So yeah, that's it up close. Alright, so the truing and dressing tool attaches to the Tormek and to this rod here by sliding through this hole and sitting on, like most things, the rail. So you push that all the way in, and then you've got a knob at the back here which you can use to tighten it up. Like so. So now this is fixed to this rail. Another thing you need to do is make sure the rail is fixed to the Tormek, so tighten those in really, really hard. So now the whole thing, you could pick the whole thing up by this rail, no issues at all. It's important to have a trough full of water because it's still a cutting tool and you just don't want to overheat anything. So the trough is full currently. And now what you do is you lower this down and you dial it in. So I was a bit preemptive in tightening these things up because I now need to get this to sink way down. So I'm going to have to move this micro adjustment ring here. All the way down, and we are getting a rough. First I'll get the surface up, standing on something. First I'll get the surface about right. So you see in there, the carbide cutter is about level with the top of the stone. Every time you do this, it does make your stone a little bit smaller. However, it's a necessary evil, and these stones, they'll still last you a few years. And this has been my learning stone, really. So I reckon the first time I got this tool, I took off probably too much, although it was pretty overdue because I didn't have this tool for the first probably 8 months or so of having the Tormek. So it is what it is, but now I'm here. It's about probably every couple of months or so I'll do it, because I probably sharpen about 10 knives or so a month with the Tormek. Alrighty, so we're going to use these winders to make sure that that cutter is actually touching the tip of the stone, and it is. So as I bump into the stone, the cutter has to sort of like knock into it and move itself up roughly. So now it's kind of taking off stone as I go across. So that is in the right spot, and that's about as much as I want to remove. Just a millimetre or two off the surface of the stone will do me just fine for this particular dressing and truing process. So now what I shall do is turn on the Tormek and use these knobs and gradually work this across the surface of the stone. Now, the quicker you work it across, the rougher the stone finishes. The slower you work it across, the more fine the stone finishes. And of course, the stone finishes can also be altered using this, which does come with the Tormek. So you can change it to either 1000 grit or 200 grit. And this is why these stones do eventually shrink, because each time you use this, you are taking a little bit of material off. In fact, when you look inside your water tray, once, every so often when you empty it out, you'll find it is probably about half stone and half steel inside there. So at any rate, let's turn it on and let's plane this stone down, and you'll see there'll be a bit of noise, but it's actually quite a cathartic process, I find. Making sure everything's tightened in, so that way the stone doesn't, the carbide cutter doesn't get moved away. And then you just use this and you wind it across. See the little guide there is taking it across? So there we go. So I noticed it was taking less off on this portion of the stone here because it was more skipping across the top. And then when I got to here, it properly sunk in and did a good bit of leveling out. I can feel that skipping has actually put a little bit of a straight, and this isn't the end of the world, quite a rough sort of tire track finish on the stone. So what I'll do is I'm going to go over it again and cut in just a little bit deeper and get this off, just so I don't have to do it with this stone for too long. It's just a quicker way. So we're going to just go from the other way across, and we're going to lower it down just a little tiny bit and do another layer. Very precise you want to be, because it is, you don't want to be buying a new Tormek wheel every year or so, do you? There we go. So just the tip is now touching against the side, so we're going to just flatten this out again, and we're going to get this pattern off, because whilst this would cut just fine, it'd cut very, very aggressively actually. You still want as even as you can get on the Tormek. So let's do it. I'll stop there and I'll show you exactly what I'm on about here. So you can see there, you've got a little hump where the old stuff is getting taken off and the new stuff, which is really nice and smooth and uniform, is getting put on. So a little slight hump, you can get your fingernail on it, but it's not too much at all. Let's continue. You'll notice by the silence that it is now done, and you can maybe even see here it's a very nice even looking wheel. So let's turn it off and see how it looks. Alrighty, so that is about how it comes from the factory. So nice clear edges at the top, so I'm talking there, very nice and round, smooth, still rough obviously, it's definitely a rougher finish now. Cosmetically, I guess there's a slight line there, but you can't feel at all, and that will come off simply by using the standard grading stone. But yeah, that's how a Tormek wheel will sort of perform the best, when it's mainly just complete flat, cornery, nice across the surface here. So, it's a pretty important part of your Tormek maintenance, I guess. I found it really is important. You see how much stuff comes out off the stone, so that's all sort of stone water in there. And yeah, just a nice even stone to enable you to be as precise as you can. You know, you're never going to get the precision of, say, the KME sharpening systems or something with an automatic system like this. It's always going to be the subject to, say, a slight bit of rock maybe, all sorts of things. But if you keep it all in top working order, you can get some pretty even bevels and some pretty nice lines, as long as your skill is up, you know, to where it gets to be after about a year or so. I'm still not amazing with the Tormek. I still make mistakes. I still do often prefer, with my use of it, so I'll get this off. I still actually prefer to use the Tormek, so I take it away here. I prefer to fix the guide in the front way here, like this. Sorry, I'm just trying to do it from behind the camera. I prefer the knives going with the stone moving away from them, so there's a little bit less margin for making sudden or, like, you know, hard to keep track of errors, but that's just me. Lately I've been using this small knife jig, so this does actually work way better with having it from the top, because especially when you come this way, it does start to knock into the handle and whatnot as well. So not a big deal, but just another thing I've sort of noticed.